In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It is written that there was a void, an infinite void. The best way that we can depict this void is by water. And in the midst of this void came across a certain level of maturity that manifested and embodied itself in a voice. And that voice said, "Let there be light." And there was light. It is said also that later there was land, and that he called earth to separate the waters. And because we coincide and share all of these elements of the earth, we too can call ourselves earth. Greetings and welcome to another step in the journey known as the build. In the burning bush we are. Greetings, good evening. I am taking a moment of silence that's just as brief as it has already passed, concerning the subject matter which we will bring to the build tonight, so that every message be manifest in a way that can be digested, if only in parts at a time, and taken in with full knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, passed on with positive energy from person to person, but also with the reality of evidence that we must prepare ourselves accordingly. I am partnered by my brethren. Eli will now bring forth the announcements, and we shall begin.
Thank you. Thank you. I forgot about the mute, but blessings. I was saying that for some reason it's raining again. It's a light drizzle. And I guess Ezekiel in the Bible, Ezekiel said, cloud by day and fire by night. We may have some fun stuff, but every week. Blessings, everyone. I hope and pray everyone is doing well. Let me begin. The words we are expressing freely are not meant to offend anyone. Our words are not meant to be in any competition with anyone else's wisdom. Your wisdom and understanding is yours alone. We are choosing to remain consecrated while being in the furnace of affliction, the burning bush. The reason why we use burning bush, if you do not remember, it takes a lot of strength to remain regal as a human while living on this earth. So if you think about the story, Moses went, I think he went to the top of the mountain, and the mountain was located in a desert. So you can imagine a bush that is dry and is burning, but is not burning. That is something that is pretty extreme. So we are trying our best no matter what we're going through, the highs and the lows. We want to be consistent just like existence itself. Conquering ignorance is essential. Nobody is born wise. A person has to make serious efforts to develop the qualities needed to be able to speak and achieve Mayat without falling into the twin traps of vanity and greed. Every day, the ears or the living have to be made to listen to the words of wisdom. If the teachings is properly understood, then righteousness will become a reality. Just acts conforming to the precepts of Mayat are born out of this understanding. A deed done without egotism is a useful, shining example to others, providing it obeys the golden rule to act for he who acts. The Egyptian sage portrays himself a vigilant heart and a plain tongue, capable of satisfying God and the gods because his or her entire existence rests on knowledge and not on belief. And in the ancient Kemetic book of Two Ways, it says that the causes of wrongdoing are ignorance and immaturity. Now remember, ignorance is just a lack of knowledge of. So we hope and pray what we are going to share with you guys today will be food of substance. And I hope it is not too hot, nor will it be too cold. But just like the Porsche, was it called the Porsche that when she went to the bear's den and it was just perfect, that the information that we are sharing is just the right temperature for your temperament to enjoy the sweetness of just something that we are expressing because we think it is valuable in today's time. Thank you, everyone. Blessings, Brother Mike.
The subject matter, I will give warning, will go by pretty swiftly, for there is a lot to discuss. It is imperative that if you are in the least inclination interested in what is going to be talked about today, that you view these multiple times in order to achieve internalization of what is going to be shared today. This will be swift, and for some, this might be painful, but it is necessary for us, the burning bush, to endure. Today, we're going to talk about not the elements, but patterns and the end of patterns and the beginning of new patterns. What am I meaning by that? I am meaning that in our existence, in our limited density and maturity, there is a such thing as a beginning and an end to what we know. There will never be a such thing as the end of the world For the world itself will go upon its own way for as long as it chooses to, and it has chosen to for millions of years. However, the world as we know it begins and ends in patterns. We're going to speak about those patterns today as we prepare for the grand reset. Now, mind you, there are many charismatics who have taken the mantle and ran with it as a means to create a culture of cult societies that bank upon the idea of having the fear of the end of the world, of a resurrection, of an enlightenment period that brings about power to the self. This is not that said thing at all. On the contrary, we are granting all equal power or the chance and choice to obtain such by what we will share today. I will start with a math problem. What is 6,000 divided by 250? 6,000 divided by 250 equals 24. There have been 23 empires of what we know to be true by our evidence, though there have only been maybe 6 or 7 that have been uttered, i.e., the Roman Empire, the ancient Egyptian Empire, so forth and so on. But there are, to a more extrapolated knowledge, 23 empires. But those empires all had a beginning and an end to them. This will all make sense very soon. Upon simply Googling, how long does an empire last? The nationaldesk.com states the average empire survives for only 250 years. When historians say that an empire fell, they mean that the central state no longer exercised its broad power. This happened either because the state itself ceased to exist, or because the state's power was reduced as parts of the empire became independent of its control. Now that we have that definition and explanation in our minds, I want you to turn outside to the consciousness of the world around you right now and think of 3 following concepts: knowledge on a public forum, wisdom by means of group and private sectors, and the understanding of all of those. In the certifications of electrical engineering, there is a certification known as A+. A+ teaches that in its first lesson regarding any problem, regarding any electronic device, that it is easier to replace than it is to repair. Also, even worse than that, as I will gather into this conversation, that it is even easier to destroy altogether than it is to replace, to rebuy, repurchase. A plus teaches that in the simple metaphor using computers, if you are having an issue with your computer, reset it, whether it is a soft or hard reset. To turn it off, wait for a time, turn it back on, and see if it fixes itself by default. If that does not work, then we will replace, we will move said parts in and out of their components to see if that will cause a hot swap or a cold swap to recalibrate said entities of said machine. And then and only then, once all of those are exhausted, do we attempt to solder and repair. Humanity, for as long as humanity has been, has always done this the opposite way, has always done this in the opposite direction. It has attempted many times under the guise of jargon, rhetoric, politics, attempted to repair a problem first, then replace it, then reset it. This is shown in every empire. So what is the repairing? It is the bandages that happens in all of the concepts of humanity, including but not limited to politics, the separatism, the idea and illusion of individuality of a society, which causes riots, boycottings, votings for higher ups in office that do nothing, arguments that arouse full-on anger to other cultures from other cultures that exists for generations that cannot be undone seemingly. And then when all of that is said and done, the replacement happens. Gentrification as a means of replacement of certain cultures, placing them in different areas to recalibrate them to certain areas. Replacement of policing and security with stronger forces to enforce more control, some of which can be even totalitarian, which calls forth those who do not want to be replaced or fixed, the equivalent of utter anarchy, the call for it by law to end all laws, thus ending all control, thus calling forth war that ends in the decimation of an empire and forcing it to reset. Back to that mathematical equation, if we are to think about the existence of our world, of our society, we are nearing the end of the 24th empire right now. We are only a few years away from such. To be precise, 8 years. 2030 is the end of the 24th empire. Here's where it is a problem for us. We know of many cultures who refuses to be repaired. We know of many different entities that will fight against the replacement of entities that are to enforce control, which will cause that war that will end all things. That is the fire in the burning bush that we stand in the midst of today. I am going to pass the torch to Eli as he will give you evidence that he has documented over the last few days of what is happening to us as a culture in regards to our information in public forums and the like. Specifically, libraries and other places where knowledge is supposed to be ascertained. Please continue to talk, Eli. I am looking forward to this.
Blessings, Brother Michael, and thank you very much. And again, I have to forgive my part because the rain is off and on, so I don't know what it's going to do with my connection. From that specific part of the subject, we know that I'm going to have to paraphrase a lot because, again, in our normal lives, we do so much, and I did not fully get the opportunity to be as thorough as I like to be at this particular meeting, because I know Brother Mike have a lot of extensive quality information to share with you guys. And I'm literally at the stage of listening more than speaking. And I love how Brother Mike speaks so eloquently and how he expresses himself. It's an honor to be able to enjoy the brother's words of his expression and wisdom and how he articulate things. This is nice. But from that particular point, dealing with libraries in America, my own personal experience this past, I think, Saturday, I had to go and print out some things. And mind you, I've been going to this library in this neighborhood for quite some time. And that is why it was such a shock to see the other things they offered. When I was going to the library with the two gentlemen, the younger gentlemen, they had this STEM room with 3D printers and this all type of technologies in there. And they had no one to work the technologies because this is a small town. So it's amazing that these small rural areas, the government provide a certain amount of financial monies to these small towns. And yes, these small towns purchase a lot of technology. And of course, these rooms were empty. So what happened this past weekend with this particular library I went to, they had a movie playing, a free movie. They have a stage where children can, learn performing arts and things of that nature. Because many years ago, I went to the museum to go into the basement with the two gentlemen so we can do some type of stage performance like puppet shows and other things of that nature. So I did a little research, and I think I posted something many years ago about the level of education when it concerns with Black youth, specifically in America. I think they were saying that 80 or more percent of African American children are not proficient in reading or writing or doing math. Also, recently, you can guys look it up. I forgot what state it is. This state passed a law that students in general, in order to, let me see, it said that they do not have to prove that they can read or write in order to receive their high school diploma. And it was saying that it's going to help out the indigenous communities, Native Americans, and brown community, meaning Hispanics and African Americans. So they will be allowed to go to school and not be proficient in something that they need to be proficient in life, and they can still receive their high school diploma. Another thing that just happened recently, which was already predicted, Brother Michael gave me some information about the state of Illinois, how you can commit second-degree murder and do other crimes and will not be convicted. So when I looked that up, I saw the truth in it. Now, remember, I always talk about projecting things. I always talk about the things called like a vision board. If you can remember, a vision board is something of, I would say, a material gain that you may want. For example, if I like a convertible Volvo, I like a red Volvo. So in my mind, I have the picture of this red Volvo that I would like to have for myself. So according to the vision board, you'll get a magazine, you will cut out the picture of the vehicle, you put it on something that you will see on a daily basis. So every time you see this thing, you project in your mind and you may verbalize it that one day I would like to receive this vehicle. And a lot of people spoke about the success of a vision board. Now, how we can believe from that perspective when it becomes to materialism, but we don't believe a vision board will manifest when it comes to the nature of the environment. When Brother Michael informed me about this law, for some reason, because I work 2 jobs, I went to work today around 3 a.m. I looked on the TV, and what was playing on the TV was a movie called Running Man. If you remember Running Man, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a criminal. I think they made some makeshift crime that he did not truly commit, but they altered the scenes to make it look like he killed people. So, in order to serve his crime, he had to be put on some type of adventure, if you will. So he had to go through certain things, and the crowd was applauding. It was like what we consider um, reality TV. So you had the people applauding and clapping, and he was going through certain things, and he saw his activities via screen. Also, it was a movie that was called The Purge. I never saw the movie, but basically, what I heard was you had a particular amount of time that you can do whatever you want, and you will not be arrested or you will not be put into some form of detention on anything that you chose to do at that time in that set amount of time. Also, I remember when it comes to women specifically, I remember hearing someone who was wise. They said a lot of you women, the evidence have shown that you reject nerds and good men. That God will make it so bad for you that you will run or beg to have a good man in your life. So if we have a law that will allow people who commit these crimes, like a lady, she was just snatched and murdered. So if you get snatched up, if you be sex trafficking, things of that nature, according to this law, you will not serve no prison time. Thus, all this amazing independence that you have, that you work hard for, and you rejected the nerd and the nice guy. This setup, when it grows, and you only know that it's going to grow, that eventually these people, because they got the borders open, that all these people are going to come around and they will have a freedom to do certain things to you guys without being penalized, thus making the good guy, God's religion and modesty, and all the things that is rejected with force. Because a lot of people historically, the evidence have shown, like Amber Rose, she got the slut walk, and everybody want their rights, and we want this level of freedom. Now, it's okay to have freedom, but every level of freedom, there is a level of responsibility and obligation. So when Brother Mike is going to present more evidence about this great reset, because the definition of reset that I looked up is set again, or differently. In computer, reset clears any pending errors or events and bring a system to normal conditions. So is it normal to have a walk in a society full of men? Because back in the days, when a king had a harem, it was women only. So women had their place and space, and men could not go into the places where women had their liberation or their freedoms. Now, women are demanding these freedoms in the presence of men. So these beautiful freedoms, the evidence have shown that transgender men are outdoing the women when it comes to sports and things of that nature. So you fought for these freedoms. Now you need to see the rewards of the thing that you work for. So I'm going to give this example, and then I'm going to give another small example so Brother Mike can come on, because Brother Mike has some information to share. Remember, this is the great reset that we need to try to get back to things that we consider normal, a level of homeostasis. So this is my question to you guys, or my little story. Can you imagine a man who is 6 foot and a girl who may be 5'3" or 5'4"? If they live together in an apartment and they got into an argument and they decide to have blows, a man who was 5'10", a woman who was 5'2", he beat her down with all his might, and she may have black eyes or may not, but he knocks her out and things of that nature. Normally, people say that man should go to jail because he used what we already know, his physical strength, which is greater than her strength, to beat her down. So according to the way that you women have fought for these freedoms of all these different ideas of freedom, you can have the same man and the same girl. You will put them in the ring, an MMA ring. All he need to do is put on a dress. He can be the same man, and she can be the same woman. And they hit the bell, and he physically beat her down the same intensity as he did when it was in an apartment. But this situation, they will give him a paycheck. He will get paid for doing the same thing. All he did was put on or identified as a woman. So all the things that you guys are fighting for, you seem not to want. Another thing that we have discovered, domestic violence. I remember women was very angry about domestic violence. Now we discover that the most violent couples are lesbian couples. They have the most domestic violence rate. So thank God for the camera and video thing. So now we can see these things. We don't necessarily have to go in books to see the things that seem not to work well for our well-being. So again, not to go too far, but again, these are things that you can look up for yourself. These are not words that I have done. Because again, as human beings, we love to be offended over words, which doesn't make any sense, especially factual evidence. So Brother Mike, please, from this premise, build on the behaviors like the problems with the ocean. Remember, O3, ozone in our atmosphere, how it damages our lungs. When the heat come in, it's hotter just because we got O3, 3 oxygen atoms that's come together that damage our lungs and damage our body that we'll breathe in. These are things that comes from the behavior that we do as humans every day that we need to repair. Thank you, Brother Michael.
Excellent. Excellent. This build is excellent. I will start with putting more of those facts to show and prove. As of, according to the Missouri Independent Report, as of October 5th, 2021, 1,000 Missouri foster kids have gone missing. Now, in 2022, almost 1 year after, we are at 4,000. Very recently, 95 children have been missing in Boston, Massachusetts. It is being reported that they vanished. Not that they were kidnapped, not that they were trafficked, but they have vanished. Vanish as in disappear, as in taken off of the earth, as in canceled. This is part of the reset. Brother Eli spoke about domestic violence. According to the dcvlp.org, which does nothing but collect statistics on domestic violence the world over. It states that around 45% of lesbian and 61% of bisexual women have experienced forms of R-word and physical violence by an intimate partner, as compared to 35% of straight women. 26% of gay men and 37% of bisexual men have experienced forms of R-word and physical violence by an intimate partner, compared to 29% of straight men. This is the reset. The state of Oregon is the state that Eli was speaking about when it comes to the bill being passed for law by Oregon Governor Kate Brown, that there will not be, as a prerequisite for graduation, a necessity to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you have the ability to read, to write, to practice, and to emulate mathematical equations, to solve them with cognitive thinking. This is the same state that has criminalized crack cocaine to be used in designated areas. This is the same state that allows the homeless to park, to camp, even in the middle of city streets, without any consequence. This is the reset. In The Purge, a film of which I have indeed witnessed, what was the very first to go? The homeless and the destitute, because they were thought of as fodder. They had no worth. So they were thought of as playthings, as toys for the fun of those who were engaging in said purge. Certain security measures were done for those who did not want to engage in the purge. The equivalent of turning their house literally into a garage with doors that would cover its entirety, every floor, in metal for a 24-hour period. I remember being in the theater when watching the very first iteration of the series, of which there are, to my understanding, 7, a total of 7 movies for The Purge, due to its popularity. Again, we're talking about the toxicity that is happening in our state of humanity and what we consider entertaining. There was cheering on in the crowds for the murders that would go without answer in the film. It was entertainment. Now, If we go back to other empires, how coincidental, how much of it does it sound like the age of gladiators when prisoners were taken into the Colosseum to die as sport? A Colosseum is nothing more than a place where everyone can witness a sport, whatever is considered a sport. If death itself becomes a sport, if it is cheered on like the Running Man, if it is to be articulated on film or media, which we are not far from that now, then how much can humanity stand before it falls? We live in a world where babies are not being born because there are no more relationships where babies are welcomed in the household. Tell me, those who are listening right now that are witnessing this podcast, how many individuals in their 20s aspire to have a family? I'll wait, but not long. How many who are in the middle school to high school ages have not been in some way indoctrined with an agenda that will prevent them from even being able to procreate in the natural way to bring forth generations into the world? That is the turning off of a switch of a power that we have, the thermal electromagnetic connection that we have as human beings to create other human beings. Instead, it is being replaced with the singularity of robots, of androids, of even the depiction of illegal entities for sexual gratification. Right now, you can purchase a sex doll that walks, that talks, that has orifices that can be manipulated, that appear to be the anatomy of small children, and it is not illegal. This is happening right now. This is not a test. This is not a film. This is our reality. There's one more thing that I want to say, and I want to pass this on for thoughts from Eli. And this goes into the bill that we had regarding Dune, which is a book and a series of films, one of which is a very old film in the 80s, another one which has been redone, a reiteration of it. But the original and the book has a certain quote. And I hope that this is something that we, the burning bush, can, will, and continue to live by. It is called the Bene Gesserit right. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain.
Blessings, brother. Also, I heard you say that it went from 1,000 to 4,000 in 1 year. And you may hear a little rain because it's raining pretty hard now. So I don't want to be too long. Can you hear me or you hear the rain? Okay. Yes. Studies estimate that there are now 15 to 51 trillion pieces of plastic in the world's ocean. 15 to 51 trillion pieces of plastic in the world's ocean. The latest available national data suggests that nearly 1.4 million children from pre-kindergarten through 12th grade and nearly 126,000 unoccupied youths were experiencing homelessness in the year 2018 and 2019 school year. So we have 1.4 million children from pre kindergarten through the 12th grade. Also, when you do a little research when it comes to um, what happened when you decide to flush your toilet, most people do not have a clue what happens to it. They'll say it will go to the facility that's supposed to cleanse it. But what happened is, come to find out, I think these statistics might not be current. But when I looked them up prior, it said we only have the ability to clean about 30% of sewage, and the rest goes to other places. So if there are approximately 15 to 51 trillion pieces of plastics in the ocean, and then we put other things inside the ocean, and we have discovered the ocean is responsible of cleaning the atmosphere at night. Also, when you look at the infrastructure of American cities, a lot of these sewer lines and things of that nature been put in place, I think, since the early 1920s. And now we are in the year 2022. Many years ago, I remember I was in New York and I was driving through one of their bridges, I think inside of a little mountain or something, and it was leaking water. The infrastructure of the United States are in a bad condition. And we know that a lot of us are so spoiled that we will not like the government to say, let's stop using your water, your toilet, the system, the electric grid for about 4 years so we can just redo everything. So I would say that when you look at the recent pandemic, I remember we looked at cities like Los Angeles. I saw pictures where you can actually see from the person's patio straight to the city. You can see the skyscrapers, how everything cleared up the smog. Now again, I hope and pray you guys do a little bit of research. Remember, do not believe us. Look at us as being liars and fraud. Go do your research and prove us wrong. We are not the gods to tell you exactly what things are, how things they should be. We are learning and observing. So we love for our information to be challenged because you have a right to know, because it's been many times that the public been led astray. So we love honesty and balance. Also, brothers and sisters, children of light and life and love, we don't have the monopoly on truth. We don't know enough. So we are humble in our expression. But if you decide to judge what we are trying to learn ourselves, please use a critical eye and learn. And then if you find something that we shared that was not correct, please honor us and respect us enough to share the correct information. Because we are brothers and sisters of light, life, and love, and of God. Another thing I want you guys to look at, since we do not have the ability to tell the government to say no, cut off the water system and things of that nature for 4 to 5 years, COVID has shown when human beings are locked away how things can repair themselves. So, what I was going to say earlier was I was going to say look up ozone, O3, and our level of breathing. I forgot. I think it's called the stratosphere, but is the area that we use. Look at the effects of ozone when it comes to the health of us. There are pretty much the same symptoms as other things that we are dealing with today. So we can be dealing with God and the sun and the effects of our behavior because we have smog in the atmosphere, or we could look at the things of like viruses of things that we're dealing with today. No matter what, we all are being affected by these beautiful things that God is representing to us. And the reason why I call them beautiful, because as human beings, just like a responsible parent will present challenges that you will have the ability to figure out for yourself. Because when you are a child of good parents, you will show them with your own actions and behavior that you can make responsible decisions for yourself. Because we exist because everything else exists. So just like the grandmother who had her grandson and he got into trouble and the police were chasing him and he ran into his grandmother's home and the police had to run into her home and she got shot. If something harms you, we can be affected by it as well. None of us exist as an individual. So I hope you guys really truly will share some of your knowledge and come on the show with us, representing in your divine right. And I hope and pray that Brother Mike will share some more beautiful, honorable information so we all can enjoy the amazing, harmonious words of Brother Mike. So I hope and pray that I didn't say anything that was offensive or mean spirited, because that was not and is not my intentions. I am someone who loves his death. I am about to die. One day I will die. And when I die, I want to look back and say, I was a good human being. So I live for my death, day in and day out. Most of my decisions I make, I look as if God is facing me. If you don't believe me, talk to the people who've been living with me or near me for extensive amount of time. And I've been this way since I was a child. And I'm not trying to mess up as an old man. So I hope and pray that I can do better with my example, because one day I will have to turn in my report card to someone or to something that is greater than myself at the moment. So I hope and pray that I didn't say anything offensive. But again, we're talking about a reset. And you guys have made some very serious decisions that we only spoke about. And we only talking about the rewards of your decisions, your personal decisions. So it's not talking about the bad things, but we are just pointing to things that will eventually harm us all. And I hope my volume wasn't too loud because it's raining loud. So thank you, brothers and sisters, for your time, because I have not created this time, nor can I maintain the time. So thank you for spending time with us. And this is Brother Eli. Blessings.
Science has proven that everything is infinitely large and small, macrocosm, microcosm. If we are indeed the earth and the elements therein, if the pollution that we place into the air can destroy the ozone layer, can't the pollution that we put inside ourselves destroy our layers just the same? This, no matter how slow it is a suicide of sorts. It is an expeditious journey towards the ending of your life and other lives, which we, under the collective of the burning bush, understand fully that we are one, which means we feel all of that loss. People say that there are power in numbers, in the millions and the billions, which we understand by our knowledge that we've ascertained that the biggest number is one, because one can be any size, infinitely large or small, and everything else is a derivative and a dividend of that big one. Unison is awesome. There are trash cities across the world that are dedicated to nothing more than being landfills, and the destitute crawl and sprawl underneath our trash and make it their home. If you were to see that in 3 dimensions in front of you, you would feel it. However, we choose other dimensions to see, which takes away the sensitivity of such. Questionable comment incoming that the ultimate in enlightenment would be the ultimate of empathy for all beings. And the desensitization of empathy for all beings is, in my not so humble opinion, the ignorance of self. For all of it is us. We speak passionately, though eloquent, though objective. Passionately because we are passionate for the one. We are that one. But we have to allow that to be. The second you are separated or severed, you are dead. If I was to remove this fingernail, it will not grow anymore, no matter where I place it. Let us live organically. Let us learn how to recycle ourselves safely. Let us learn how to be set apart as the Sephardim and allow everything around us that has the capacity to repair itself before we are replaced, before it resets. The only thing that needs resetting is our own mind. We have been taught that brainwashing is a bad thing. I yearn for the cleaning, the cleansing of my mind. I yearn for the innocence that will come from that. Once this is done, I strive for it. It is, like all knowledge, a beautiful thing. However, as my mother once said, it takes pains to be beautiful. These are the pains that we share with you. We must come to a close, although we could easily go on for hours. However, we do honor and laud the concept of time and give respect for each other's time. That said, we will continue into this discussion. We spoke more about the resetting, little of the repair, little of the replacing. We spoke more of the grand reset. Next week, we will talk about how we can replace our solutions for replacing, for recalibrating ourselves before any calamities collapses. But until then, let us remember that if there's any other element other than the earth that can represent our spirit, it will be this. For the candle cannot complain against the darkness and the harshness. It instead emits itself, then admits to itself that it is everything that we needed. It is the light, and we are that light. Now then, to show and prove that we are this light, we will not blow this away from us. Instead, we will take it in and keep this light to pass it on to others. With our palms and fingers, we take it in. And by our compulsion to show and prove all evidence, we are unharmed. Gratitude first, then multitude second. Gratitude for what we have, multitude for our manifestations. May that manifestation of peace, love, and light, in spite of war, all of which are beautiful things, be manifest unto you, the one. Blessings.